Now that the Dreams beta is over, and at least a good portion of us have had the chance to play some of the great games people have been able to create, I would like to take the chance to share my top 10 favourite games that have been made in Dreams so far. With Dreams being primarily a 3D engine, most of the games I've encountered, even platformers, have been 3D. There were only really a couple of good 2D games that I'd played, and that's not including the one that I made. That was, well, it's not going to be appearing in this video. I would have honestly expected more retro 2D platformers to have been made during the beta, so I was a little disappointed. The best one that I played was 2D Jack. 2D Jack has a very retro style, while still using 3D models and backgrounds. This gives the game a very unique style, which at times can be quite pretty. At its core, it is a very standard platformer, with basic enemies and only one ability, jumping. You go from point A to point B, collecting coins along the way, which I'm pretty sure have absolutely no use. The control itself is impressive in the fact that what I imagine was a single person was able to make it in a few weeks, with no previous experience, in Dreams. But by the standards of real platformers, it leaves a lot to be desired. Where 2D Jack excels is in the design of its levels, which are very open-ended and full of secrets. The second level has two entirely different routes for reaching the end, although both involve this stupid section. But despite the controls and, well, this bit, 2D Jack is a platformer that excels in its art style and level design. 2D platformers were not very frequent on Dreams. In contrast, horror games seem to be the thing, and honestly, I'm not complaining. It seems the Dreams community are all cultured gamers like me. We all have the same tastes. Encounter was one such horror game, and it was pretty good. There was something very surreal and unsettling about the whole thing, without it being filled with crude jump scares, which is something I'm a fan of. But there wasn't anything really that frightening about Encounter, but the actual encounter itself, right at the end with Dear Goat thing, was just pulled off really well, and it kind of stuck with me. You're conversing with some sublime being, something so much greater than yourself, but what it says isn't cliche, but really thought-provoking and actually kind of depressing. A cloud of atoms, that's what it sees you as, something material and soulless. Then it asks, does it live? You are so much less than this entity, that not only are you in it, but it is questioning whether you live, because even if you do, you don't live to the same extent. Your life is inferior, like an insect in comparison. The game as a whole wasn't much, but the encounter at the end was the second most unsettling experience on Dreams. What was the first? This. Is it possible for a single experience to make you completely desensitized to fear? And the person that made this follows me. What have I got myself into? When it comes to driving games, they usually suck. Apart from kart races, because they are purely focused on being a good time rather than trying to be as realistic as possible, and therefore just frustrating and dissatisfying. So you can understand why, when I first noticed the off-road lands, I was deterred from playing it for a while. But after likely spending a few hours labouring on one of my underwhelming creations, I decided I'd give it a go, just to escape from everything else. Needless to say, I was pleasantly surprised. Right, so at number 7 I've got what? You expect me to say more? I made a whole video on how the off-road lands exceeds your expectations throughout the entire thrilling journey, an epic odyssey where each turn brings you onto something unexpected, until the chilling ending which makes you question whether it's all worth it. There's no need me going over how you don't even seem to be in control, rather watching the experience play out before you like a dream, and the car is a vessel for this dream rather than a means of going fast or being an essential mechanic. If you want to know exactly what I think about this epic adventure that exceeds the stereotypes of driving simulators, you should probably watch my video all about it. Next. When I said that there wasn't an abundance of 2D platformers on Dreams, there sure are a phenomenal selection of 3D ones. One such phenomenal 3D platformer being Cave In. Cave In is, on the surface, pretty simplistic. There's no real complexity to the platforming, or any gimmicks or abilities. No, what makes Cave In such a beautiful game is how the platforming blends into the environment. Cave In really shows off the stunning environments that can be crafted with Dreams tools, while still integrating a fun platformer into it without it seeming out of place. And, unlike most platformers I've ever played, I didn't have many problems with the control. Well, of course I had some problems, I always have some problems, but I don't think they're worth mentioning. It was probably mostly down to my £50 DualShock 4 having too much independence. Surprisingly again, there didn't seem to be a huge number of shooters on Dreams. Much to my surprise, and it was a pleasant surprise, I couldn't find a single Fortnite remake. Now that's an achievement. But there was one FPS that was really, really good. That game being Prometheus FPS Demo. Again, I've covered this game in another video, so if you want my full thoughts alongside a full playthrough, I suggest you watch that. But to reiterate on what I said back then, the free aim does it. The ability to use the motion controls to aim is such an amazing innovation, allowing for a completely unique gameplay style of dodging projectiles whilst shooting the enemy with great accuracy. It says in the title, this game is a demo. Hopefully, with the full release of Dreams, a genuinely phenomenal FPS will be made using the concepts and mechanics shown here. And aside from the gameplay, the whole environment is really neat. It's not your standard FPS map littered with walls and vantage points and an enemy round every corner. It reminded me a lot of Skyrim, to the west of Whiterun, that area, if you know what I'm talking about. I didn't mention it in my video because I hadn't noticed that there are actually loads of arms. It just kind of fit in the environment, so I didn't question it. I think that's a sign of a good job. In the number 5 spot, I'm back with another 3D platformer, Shifting Islands. Shifting Islands is a lot shorter than some of the other platformers that I've played on Dreams, which is a welcome difference. The main reason that Shifting Island is above Cave-In, for example, is because of how professional it is. It seems like a genuine platformer. The control is great, the environments and models are great, and so are the mechanics. As you platform your way upwards, you collect these weird diamond things. They allow you to purchase different things at the shops found throughout the game. Each shop sells a different kind of item. The first selling hats, the last selling skins. The creator didn't have to add this, but the addition just makes the game feel a lot more whole. Unlike Cave-In and 2D Jack, Shifting Islands has a gimmick, where each time you jump, platforms will either come into or out of existence. The mechanic was so well integrated to produce some challenging platforming rather than frustrating puzzles. Overall, it's a very well made platformer. And here is another 3D platformer, this one a lot bigger by comparison. I never actually completed it, but hope to do so by the time Dreams is released. The game I'm talking about is Marvelous, and it's a Marvelous creation. The main difference in Marvelous is that you are actually in control of a marble, which can make traversing the levels a little more difficult, but it never really became frustrating. The levels themselves were often very open, especially the third level, which was as far as I got before I stopped playing. The objective for each area consists of activating something so that you may progress somewhere else, or collecting power-up, which is necessary for progression. Each level gives you a different power-up. In level 1 you get the glowing power-up, which can activate some switches and allows you better vision in dark areas. Level 2 gives you the double jump, which allows you to jump in mid-air. Level 3, which was as far as I got, allows you to turn metal, which was integrated in some very interesting ways with multiple different uses. I liked how I was able to figure out how to progress and how to utilise the various power-ups, without being explicitly told. That's a sign of good design. Marvelous is a huge game, and it's really mainly for that reason that it appears so high on this list. Most of the games on Dreams are really short, so seeing something as huge and professionally done as this just makes it stand out. And if you collect all the coins, you can even find chests that reward you with prize bubbles. I'd say that at least an hour or 2 must be put into this game in order to exhaust it. What I am looking forward to most about Dreams is playing an online co-op RPG. That is my dream, so I was kind of disappointed when I saw that most of the games in Dreams so far are very small, nothing I could spend a lot of time on with my friends, but Slayer Scrolls proved that an elaborate RPG may be possible. Slayer Scrolls clearly takes inspiration from Skyrim, and if you've watched my 5 games I'd like to see remade in Dreams PS4 video, you'll know that I very much wish to see a Skyrim remake. But as an original game, Slayer Scrolls is amazing. There are a number of different quests, each completely unique, showing what can be expected from a Dreams RPG. There isn't much of a story, but there are some events which take place that are actually very clever and unexpected. For example, as part of one of the quests, you encounter a bandit. You choose to fight them, or talk your way out of a battle. I would say that's unique, but the way I put it doesn't make it seem that way. But in an environment that's very Skyrim, it was quite unexpected. Anyway, later in the game, someone mentions the same bandit, wondering if you've seen them. You can tell them that you killed him, or that he changed his ways. For someone that killed the bandit without much thought, someone who's playing this game as they would play Skyrim, might genuinely feel some guilt at this encounter. In terms of gameplay, Slayer Scrolls is decent but nothing that impressive. The reason I love the game so much is for its depth, and I hope the creator, in the full release of Dreams, manages to create a full RPG experience. Likely the most discussed game from the beta was the PT remake. Already the remake is very impressive, although it is still quite far from emulating the original. But from the progress that has been made, I can see it soon turning into a full recreation. The fact that something like this has been made already shows great promise for future horror games in Dreams, and I'm grateful that so much attention is being put onto a remake of an unavailable game into Dreams, so more people will be able to experience the brilliant horror game. My favourite game made in the Dreams beta has to be Project Hill Redux. This horror game is so professional and detailed in its puzzles and story. It is based only in a rather small facility, but the smart progression of the game allows for a fulfilling experience to be created. I was kind of reminded of PT in the way that a variety of new events and scenes were able to be introduced in a single environment. Some moments I found genuinely unsettling, all the more so because, despite the story, they didn't have an explicit explanation. I'm a fan of how the story was integrated to make the game more interesting, while still being largely subtle and mysterious so as not to become dominant over the game itself. This was also the first game I played that made use of both the default audio output and the controller speaker to create a more immersive experience. I was inspired to use this in my own horror game. Honestly, I don't have a lot to say about Project Hill Redux, because at the end of the day it is just a linear horror game, but it was pulled off so well and so professionally that, if you haven't given it a go yet, you definitely should when Dreams is fully released. Or, alternatively, you could just watch my video on it. You should probably watch my video either way. My videos are definitely very good. That's my top 10 favourite games from the Dreams beta. What were your favourites? Let me know in the comments below. And if you want to see more Dreams content, make sure to subscribe. I hope to see you later.